All right, it's Hard Facts, the Wednesday edition, which we would typically call the midweek special, here on your number one talk station, 95.1 Nigeria Info. Sadly, Dr. Majid had to be away for another event, and so it's just going to be me in the studio today. And I'm hoping that you will join me on all the conversations to come, starting from the midweek special all the way up to the woman. And then by the time we get into our final hour of the show, just sort of ease out of the show together. My name is Somi. That's Somi, short for Somi, welcoming you this afternoon. And I'm welcoming you here if you're listening live on your radio. You can also join in on the conversation on our social media channels. Go to Facebook and YouTube at Nigeria Info Abuja. And let's delve into some of the major conversations this Wednesday afternoon. We're going to get straight into it, looking at this particular one, given the meeting that was held yesterday, where we had the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENCASN, as well as the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Gas Workers, NUPENG, warning against a plot that they're saying could undermine the nation's economic stability, weaken the oil sector, and endanger workers' welfare. They're talking about the alleged plan by the federal government to sell parts of its equity in joint venture oil and gas assets. This is coming just as a petroleum economics expert has warned that the sale of the Federation's equity in the deepwater resources can undermine the country's economic sovereignty and revenue stability. There was an insider that spoke to one of the dailies, Daily Trust, as a matter of fact, within the federal government's oil and gas sector, also speaking on the matter. And he said that the plan to strip the NNPCL of some of its powers in managing the joint ventures and production sharing contracts on behalf of millions of Nigerians through the amendment of the PIA says has gone far. And so criticisms are trailing in, especially coming from the unions, looking at how sensitive the matter is and what it will mean for example, powers to be taken away from the NNPCL and handed over to Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, which is what they're saying is going to happen. And this then makes it both a regulator and a player in the oil and gas sector. What are the implications of that? What does that mean for the country as a whole? Of course, a lot of what is coming out from the stories around the sale of their shares in the joint venture, as well as plans to amend the PIA Act, have still not been responded to, not directly at least from the federal government, but the NUPENG and PENCASN are very, very, very worried as it stands, and they're saying, look, the president has to call all the relevant people to order. The PIA does provide, in a way, for the federal government to sort of shed the burden of some of its stake in these companies, but they are worried that they are going at it too quickly and that the timing is suspicious, and also the people that they are looking to hand over their shares to, said are people with personal ties, and they have some favors, so to speak, and that's why they are crying out. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar had earlier alleged that the government intended to reduce its equity in some JVs from controlling shares of 65% and 55% to as low as 35% and 25%. And that is what some of the unions are saying. These unions, rather, are saying is looking like it's going to happen. Yes, you are allowed to shed the burden based on the PIA, but it's looking like you're doing it too quickly, and it's a little too suspicious. Also, even conversations around the possible amendment of the PIA, as this early from when it was passed, is also raising concerns, rather. And so, at this joint press briefing in Abuja yesterday, the president of PENCASN, Festus Osifo, and his NUPENG counterpart, Williams Akporeha, described this plan as short-sighted and dangerous, and are warning and calling on the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to halt this plot so that it doesn't weaken NNPCL's capacity to meet obligations such as salaries, pensions, and budgetary contributions, as well as some of the other concerns that are on the table. So that's the first first story that we're looking at today. And, the question remains, what really does this translate to? What does this really translate to? If we're looking at it in layman terms, what does the PI say? Why is it looking like they would have to amend the PIA to be able to do some of these things? Or better still, if really and truly the PIA does allow for this thing, then why are the criticisms coming about? Well, if you look at it from the government's perspective, or people who are arguing for this move by the federal government, some issues or some pointers have come up. One of them is that the government needs a lot of money right now to fund the national budget, pay off debts, or invest, say, in areas like education and healthcare, which a lot of Nigerians will say, yeah, they could definitely do a lot more in those areas. And so selling a part of these oil assets for the people who are arguing for it, they say is the fastest way to get a huge lump sum of cash. There is also another argument in favor of this sale. When you look at the payment for oil production, or what they call the cash call burden, in the current partnership, the JV, which they're selling off their shares in, the government has to pay its share of the operating and investment costs, and these are called cash calls. The government often struggles to pay this share, and this ends up delaying projects and frustrating the private partners by reducing its ownership stake. The government reduces its financial burdens and frees up money for other essential services. But even with this particular argument, concerns were like, this is one of the things that the PIA addressed, because the structure of JVs prior to the PIA is what looked more like this. It was said, and except the people who were playing in the field would argue against, it was said that when the PIA came into law, what they had was an incorporated JV, which made it a lot easier, or sort of eased the burden on the government. But this is one explanation in favor of the government's move to divest their shares. And one other thing they say, private companies are often seen as more efficient, faster at making decisions, and better at bringing in new technology and investment required to increase oil production. And so people say that, yes, when the government does reduce their share in all of this, or reduce their stake in all of this, then it will allow for the private sector to take the lead. So are you on the for side, or are you for the against? We'll come to the arguments against. But lastly, when it comes to the government's role in some of these assets, instead of being the main owner and investor, government can step back to focus on its job as a regulator and tax collector. But arguments against, one of the biggest ones, of course, is that it is a move that is seen to be the government selling off their family jewels, the nation's asset, or sort of stepping back from their role in the nation's assets, some of which are the most valuable and reliable national assets, and selling them for a one-time cash injection. What then does that mean for the long term? This is one of the arguments against. If you say, okay, yes, you need to fund the budget, why not come up with more strategic initiatives that will allow for long-term funding of the budget? Because if you fund the budget now, what happens next year? What happens 2 years down the line after these assets have been sold off? So yes, there is that quick fix argument against this move. There is also the issue of course, the simple one, such a significant stake that is being lost. If 65-55% is maybe slightly majority, even if you're going to remove yourself or reduce your stake in it, you can do it in a gradual process. You don't go from 65 to 55 to 35 or 25%. That's one of the arguments against. And then also the issue of how it is being done. They're citing a lack of transparency in the process. One of the things they mentioned, of course, being the people who are supposed to take over the stake or the shares that the government is divesting off. And oil workers also fear that there is no guarantee that the new buyers will actually invest the money needed to increase production or fix old infrastructure. Some of the things that some people will say we've seen in previous instances where some of these assets, were put up.
More conversation.
And all of that. So it does present a problematic one. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'd like to get your take on it, as well as some of the other stories we'll be sharing. Stay with us.
Hello, Abuja. This is Audio
A nation.
They have that right to protest. There is no need to go there now start shooting.
The current affairs of our state.
Everywhere we have gone to, the dirt of Abuja is not on the surface.
All at your fingertips on your Let's Talk station.
95.1 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Thank you for staying with us on your number one talk station, 95.1 Nigeria Info. It's still hard facts, the midweek edition, just without our regular guest, who, fingers crossed, should be back with us next week. Just in case you tuned in a little late and you're wondering, when am I going to hear Dr. Majid's voice? Well, we look forward to him joining us again next week. But we are looking at some of the biggest stories making conversation across the country. And one of them being the case of the unions versus the federal government, who are outrightly rejecting the sale of oil and gas assets. And I've shared some of the arguments for and some of the arguments against. I'm looking to get your take on it when the phone lines open. But still within that same sector, let's shift gears a little bit to this time around Dapman. Yes, there is still that unease, if you will, or that seeming unrest coming from Dapman, especially as it concerns conversations with Dangote Refinery. They have come out. It's been back and forth. Just last week, Wednesday, we talked about Dangote's, it was Otedola who spoke on the issue, talking about how Dapman needed to adjust and why it was important for them to move with the tide and all of that and stand behind Dangote. And according to the spokesperson for the association, Ikem Oher, who was on TV this morning, he said, look, yes, we would like for closer collaboration with the refinery, as this will ensure steady supply and end fill queues across the country. But they have one problem. They say that it doesn't look like they're getting reasonable prices from the private-owned refinery. As a matter of fact, Ikem Oher, when he was speaking, dismissed any claims of a rift with the refinery, insisting that marketers only wanted a transparent arrangement that guarantees regular distribution. Aren't we all looking for transparency? You had the unions going against the federal government and saying, look, what you're doing concerning the sale of these assets smacks of secrecy and it's not as open as it should be. Here we have Dapman again saying, look, something about this conversation with Dangote is not really adding up, right? While acknowledging Dangote Refinery as the dominant supplier, explained that access and pricing remains the major concern from Dapman. He said, and I quote, "The question is, at what price does he offer us? And do we actually have access to purchase these products from him?" He pointed out that for over 2 decades, Dapman members had developed a strong distribution networks with depots in Lagos, Warri, Port Harcourt, and Calabar, and urged Dangote to take advantage of these facilities. Interesting, because Otedola was saying, look, you need to get past these structures because long term is not going to serve us. And I remember saying last week, yes, maybe long term, but what is it looking like right now? Are marketers and fuel station owners and all of that, are they having access to the process? Dangote himself came out a few days ago admitting that there were indeed delays in the distribution. Can't remember what he said was the reason for that, but if really and truly there is this issue of, pricing and use of the depots, because of course the Dangote plan was direct distribution, but there are people who have come out to say that even the 4,000 trucks is not going to meet national demand. So it just seems like at this point they should both come together, have some sort of conference or what do you call it, a press conference or release or whatever, and they both speak to the issues, address it, so that Nigerians can move on from here. Because that man is saying that they are asking Dangote to use the depots that are already in existence for them to meet the demands of Nigerians. And people have said, why must he use them? perhaps should it be a conversation of, work with the trucks for direct distribution to some of the members who even Mr. Ikem owned up to and said some of the members of that man were in private agreements with Dangote for direct distribution, right? But if it's a case of meeting the needs of the nation, could there be like a hybrid type solution? Why must it be that one party is saying, oh, it has to be direct, and another party is saying you have to use the depots? That's where the problem now is looking at. On claims that marketers were pushing for subsidies, he replied, we're businessmen. He's a businessman. We're not asking for subsidies. What we are is negotiating, and these negotiations are still going on about how he can bridge the gap. Tomato, some of you would say. But according to him, global practice shows that refineries usually rely on bulk supply of off-takers alongside retail sales. So again, hybrid solution, right? But if at the end of the day, the hybrid solution will still have some of the intricacies and the issues that Nigerians have had to deal with all these years, and it's looking like a case of a subsidy, a sort of subtle subsidy here, then again, they both need to go back to the table together and look through this situation, right? Ohia noted that many of the association's members also operate filling stations, some with as many as 300 outlets, but restricted supply, he says, has left them unable to meet demand. He said Dangote prefers to work with a few selected partners, which, like I said, includes one or two of their members, but they would rather a more open system and not a controlled one, as that will help the country. So as we move on from this topic, perhaps the conversation or the question will now be around what's been happening since the direct distribution initiative came into play. Are there any scarcities being witnessed? Are there any issues about the pricing at the places where this direct distribution agreements have been reached? What would be the most beneficial thing for Nigerians? I think that's where we are right now. That's where the conversation is at right now. If it's a direct distribution thing and Nigerians are not feeling any kinds of lack or scarcity because it's getting to them and it's getting to them at a reduced price, then we push for that. But if it is not, then what do we push for? Working alongside Dapman and Nupeng, who have been at the forefront of disagreements with Dangote Refinery since the direct distribution conversation started. Can they just reach some kind of agreement? That's where we are at right now. So that's the second story. I will take your thoughts and contributions on it, and then we'll come to the one around the United Nations General Assembly, which has been underway. Our vice president, as a matter of fact, 3 o'clock, I think, Nigerian time, he's supposed to be delivering his own statement at the United Nations General Assembly. Of course, the one he delivered last year called for inclusivity, on the world stage. But how far have we come between that one, the 79th one, and this one, the 80th one, which is happening now? A number of things have been happening. A number of meetings have been held. Donald Trump delivered a very scathing speech calling out the UN and Europe. What's it called? I think Nigeria, in a meeting with 14 other countries, came to an agreement around cross-border cooperation. I'm going to be sharing some details about that and what it means. Just making sure that conversations that happen at the United Nations General Assembly are not just issues of lip service, or you just gather and talk and talk and talk. What should we expect from our leaders when they go to such meetings? What are the gains that we see when they fly out, attend these meetings, and come back? Again, we're going to be looking very closely at the cross-border cooperation agreements that we reached. I think something around the digital cooperation system between Nigeria and the 14 other states. We're going to be touching on that very briefly. But let me open up the phone lines and take your contributions on the two stories shared so far. 0700951 0000, 009-597-4869, and on WhatsApp it's 009-993-0137. We're talking about some of the biggest stories, one of them being the unions rejecting the sale of oil and gas assets by the federal government, who is looking to reduce their stake and do it rather drastically. And the question is, what side are you on? Are you for the sale or are you against the sale? Some people will say, oh, in the course of a time that federal government has handled some of these assets and all of that, what have they done with it? There are arguments that private companies will be able to deliver more in terms of decision-making, technology, and every other thing that they can impute into it. Do you think that the federal government is well within their right to do that, especially since there seems to be some backing from the PIA? Or you think that Nupeng and Pengerson are in order? And then we'll also talk about Datman and Dangote. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Somi.
Welcome. Good to have you here, sir.
Thank you. Most of our government departments and divisions that are not working at the national level, we should sell them out. If Arurog is not performing, we should sell it out rather than diversify. I don't know the kind of economic policies we are selling the economic heritages that belong to Nigerians and Nigerian yet unborn without consultation, without resort to public opinion. Anyone in power can take decision on the majority of Nigeria without consultation. It's unfair. Selling national assets to their friends and cronies. It's unfortunate. And delivering peace and United Nations is not anything. It's what do you have to offer to the global community? Have you filled your home? What do you have to share? What is your stake at the global affair? Not going there and making flowery speeches. And even the United Nations at 80, what have they been able to achieve with superpower countries oppressing the minor countries? Technology and using modern warfare to oppress the whole of the world. Cybercrime, a lot of things. Even the United Nations has lasted its usefulness to me, because there is humanitarian crisis escalation all over the place. Thank you. That is my take.
All right, then. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. Touched on all the issues. And I haven't even gotten into the third one fully yet. But I appreciate your contribution, sir. Thank you so much. So, yes. Unions are rejecting the sale of oil and gas assets, and Datman continues the conversation or the negotiations, as they put it, with Dangote Refinery. Which side are you on concerning each of the conversations? Again, I'll come to the UN General Assembly in a little bit. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Welcome.
This is Barnabas calling from Niger.
Welcome, Barnabas. Go ahead.
And my own take is instead of selling the oil company, instead of selling it out, why not to change it, the entire management, from the number one person to the fifth person there, to remove them and 60 new people. Since they sell NEPA to keep the things and whatever, to private companies, is Nigeria having salary than before? So if they say they're not, they think that we'll be having better oil than now. That is my own take. So I want to suggest that instead of sending it out, they say push everybody from number one person to the least, pack them, employ new people, and see whether it's work. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, then. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Welcome.
My name is Adola Victor from Bisalaji.
Good to have you here, sir. Go ahead.
You see, you have to call it spade a spade. You see, it is better we sell some of our national assets that we know that are not functional. Because for many years, we have been wasting a lot of billions of dollars
on this, as especially our 4 refineries, and they have not worked. The millions of dollars have been millions of dollars and naira have been sunk on this refinery. So, I will support. The problem with Bengal is that some of them, they are benefiting from the rot in that oil sector. And if these assets are sold, they will not benefit again. They are fighting for their own part. They are fighting for their own settlement. They know. Some of them collude with officers or with some of these government, some of these officers in government. So such us. Therefore, let them sell anything that is sellable. You see, we cannot continue to mess up this country. You see, and let them sell them to serious investors, not these portfolio investors, these shop investors that are not equity. And also, they can also get money in other areas. For instance, let this government implement or answer a report. Some ministries have to be like, not to carry some ministries, not to cut costs, and all this money too now, and two, all this money we have talking to state governors. Are they making use of this government? Are the people at the state level or the government, are they paying back? They should cost 30% to finance our critical infrastructure. We have money. And let all the political officers cut their due pay and allowances.
Okay.
This system we are running, this presidential system of we are running, is too expensive. We have to cut costs. We have to adjust in order to move this country forward. Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you very much. I'll take one more call and then go to the third story. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, Somi.
Welcome.
I have been waiting to hear Dr. Majid. It's unfortunate that he's not there with you. I called the listeners and I greet the listeners, Abubakar and the last caller.
All right, then. Thank you.
For the privatization or yes,
good afternoon.
If they can do that genuinely,
yes,
I see no reason. For the past years, we have been spending a huge amount of money. Somi, do you know how many $1 billion have been spent for turnaround maintenance of our refinery? And how much does it cost Dangote to build his own world-class refinery? The money that has been spending for turnaround maintenance of the refinery should have built the type of Dangote about 2 times or 3 times in this country. Since 1999 up till date, if you calculate how many $1 billion been spent, and these people are there collecting humongous amount of salary, and our refinery are not working. So why keeping it? Why can't we do the due diligence? And if they are to sell it, they should be open to all marketers, who the people that can be able to purchase it for our own benefit. They said telecommunication company. Are we not having other telecommunication company that you have the choice that you can use? What government can do, they can regulate. They have the power to regulate. Just like Ajakuta, we have been keeping Ajakuta for years and they are being for moribund. So if they can be able to do it with human faces, without any wulu, without giving their friends, honestly, I'm of the opinion that they should let it out so that we move forward. Thank you so much. I appreciate.
Thank you so much, Selassie. That's another concern that the unions had. They said, okay, even if you're going to go ahead and sell it, then it should be done in the spirit and the letter of the PIA, which allows for transparency, pushes for good governance. Don't do it under the carpet, through the corners. Do it direct. It's one of the things that they're crying out for. Let's just take this one more. Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. So, Shirley Somi.
Welcome.
I'm a member of the South of Bakar Ali, aka Tinubu Pekin. I'm calling from Pibu Kubwa.
Go ahead, sir.
For me personally, I think one of the grievous mistakes the late President Yar'Adua did was the reversing the sales of those refineries. It may have been done in the way and manner LNG was done. Maybe some percentage go to the Nigerian Federation, then some percentage go to private individuals. Look at it now, from 2007 to date. Can you imagine how much has that refinery got in the name of maintenance? Until tomorrow, till eternity, the refinery has refused to function. Let me give you an analogy. It's just like you have a car. Let me use a bus as an example. You have a bus, you hire a driver and conductor. The driver and conductor are the workers in the refinery. You pay that driver, you pay that conductor. But that bus is parked in front of your house. All the driver will ask you, we need to maintain this bus, we need to service this bus. The bus is not bringing you a kobo, and you have been servicing it for many years, and you have been buying spare parts to replace the ones that, come on, does this not common sense? Does it come out with connote with common sense? We are just wicked as people, and we have displayed characteristics that show that we don't like our country. I don't care whether they sell it or not, but personally, they should sell it, because just a conduit through which elites of this country are looting the masses to stupor without any form of accountability. How much did the late Buhari spend on it? Almost the money is even enough to build new refinery. That's it. And some individual will say if they sell it, they will buy it. But let their cronies go and buy it so that Nigerian money will not be stolen through that means. If they lie, let them buy it 15 naira, so that we know that we are done with that wahala forever. Thank you very much for the wonderful opportunity.
All right, Abubakar, thank you so much. We'll come back to the phone lines in a little bit. Let me just take the messages, take the last story, and then we'll open up the phone lines again. Good afternoon, Somi. Oludade Abiodun says, I don't really take Atiku serious at all, because he's one of them. He's only behaving like an opposition. He's no more, no less. Ooh, what are we talking about here? Okay. He says, you see some of these opposition figures, they're only pretending they're not for the good of Nigeria. And if they find themselves at the corridor of power, they'll do the same. Some of them criticize everything. In fact, they will even tell you what they themselves don't believe. Why is it so difficult for the government of Nigeria to manage our resources? Okay. He says, I'm also joining the union to reject the planned sale of our property. Well, I'm not quite sure where you went with at the very beginning of the message, because I think my mention of Atiku in the conversation was when he actually alluded to what is now being done. Now, the federal government was going to, divest their shares, come down to as low as 30 to 25%, which was actually how would I put it, sort of like an opposition of the plan. Again, the same thing that Nupeng and Pengasin are complaining of right now. But thank you for your message still. This one here says that some of us are not surprised. We know the intentions of this government is to corner the national assets to their cronies, but you can take this to the bank. It will not come to fruition, and even if it does, it will be reversed when a new government comes in. Since the Tinubu presidency is a one-term presidency. Okay, if you say so. So this government thinks every Nigerian is a fool. If the government cannot manage a national asset and JV, then it's obvious they have no business in government. They should just throw in the towel and resign. Nemes says, government cannot be in existence just to collect taxes while leaving Nigerians at the mercies of market forces. Says, on that man trying to arm twist Dangote, it's not going to work, because it's obvious they have the leeches that need to be eradicated from our oil sector. The question that man has not answered is what is holding them from building their refineries since the formation of the rent-seeking association. Finally, it will be a hopeless waste to listen to what the president will say at the UN summit. Okay. The vice president is representing the president at the UN summit, and we'll definitely be bringing you the highlights of that conversation. At least it's not for anything, so that you're aware of what our representatives are saying on the world stage, okay? Nesomi, I am very bitter on the FG sale of the nation's assets, both now and in the past. I support the union's rejection of selling the nation's assets. This is because it's far-reaching negative implications for us and the future generations unborn. Possibly, the FG handlers have forgotten or don't know that the argument that government has no business in business holds no water. Some people will beg to differ. Moreover, says China and other nations have proved that government can run businesses profitably and for the benefits of all the citizens. Again, mankind were able to collectively organize the welfare from the so-called primitive times when they operated communal life. I am going to stop the message there. Let me wrap it up at the bottom. Social engineer Comrade Fodu, you know your messages are usually very long. He says, I plead the FG to stop selling the nation's assets. The federal government should hand over such companies to NLC and Co. to manage. NLC, okay, that's the first. And Ekenemi NS says, my sister, is it not a shame that a country like Nigeria has no single refinery functioning? We, the ordinary people, will fight anyone who doesn't want Dangote refinery to work. Are we not shameless? A whole country that calls itself giant of the continent does not have a single functional refinery, whereas we have billionaires who have refineries abroad. And this last one here, I'll come back to the rest. Good afternoon, Somi. I'm Nemeka from Karimo. The way we are going in this country, one day they will put up Nigeria for sale, since we're now selling anything that is not working, because the country is not working as well. So we should brace up for that day. He says, God bless you. Like I said, we'll come back and take more of your thoughts, but very quickly on the some of the conversations had at the UN General Assembly. Of course, excluding the one that Vice President is having. That report on that should come out later. I'll just run through this very quickly. What are the conversations that we are having? Nigeria, as well as 15 other countries, thereabout, have reached a cross-border cooperation agreement. And the first thing I thought when I read that was, is this the first time we're having one of those? Definitely not. But it was said that them restating this at the United Nations General Assembly is a recommitment and another call, or rather a call to re-strengthen these existing frameworks. Of course, there's also conversations around a digital cooperation agreement, DCO, I believe. Nigeria is in league with a few other countries on that one. Things like the DCO Startup Passport Initiative. This is some of the things, I think, since the DCO was established in 2020, these are some of the things that are in the works or have come to light based on these, what they call it now, these agreements that have been reached, okay? There is a DCO Startup Passport Initiative, and Nigeria's timeline for implementing the necessary legal reforms make it genuinely easy for Nigerian tech startups to access a $3.5 trillion, potentially $3.5 trillion DCO market. DCO is digital cooperation, basically. It allows for cooperation at that level and also promotes economic growth. We'll come back and talk in detail about some of these things, but yes, that's one of the meetings that has been had. The one where they reach an agreement on cross-border cooperation. We'll talk about what that means, especially in light of our challenges with insecurity here in Nigeria. Looking at the previous structures that have been put in place, a lot of you are aware of the multinational joint task force. That's one of the structures that were put in place that this meeting now came to reinforce or to state their commitment to again. Has it worked for us in the past? What progresses have we made? And hopefully this is not another flowery statement or lip service being put forward. A number of things. ECOWAS protocols exist. Bilateral agreements exist. These are some of the mechanisms in place that these countries are recommitting to. But we'll drill it down to the very, very last and say, okay, if you're going to come to this meeting and say this again, what is it going to look like when it comes to matters of insecurity? Because porous borders is one of the things that has plagued us and has been called on time and time again for the major insecurity that we're dealing with in the country. So if you're having 15 other countries or 14 other countries come and pledge to this, is it just a pledge or is it going to translate to us specifically as a country? We'll look at all of that in detail right after this time out. Please stay with us, don't go anywhere.
Of the biggest talk on your number one station for talk, Nigeria in.
More news and information coming up. We'll be back in a moment.
This is Nigeria Info.